technology, and inspirational leaders. I'm your host, Connor Sherman, and this is the Confident Defense Podcast. And welcome back to the Confident Defense Podcast, where every week I'm sitting down with VCs, CEOs, and security executives and having these honest conversations about how we as security leaders can win this infinite game of cybersecurity. So I am exceptionally excited for our conversation today. Again, we have another heavy-hitting security executive here regarding secrets management and the risk and the solutions around that. So Brian Vallelunga is the CEO of Doppler. It's a central source of truth for developers to manage secrets across whether it be projects or environments, your teammates, your devices, your clouds. It's one source of truth. Doppler is backed by Sequoia, Google, Kleiner Perkins. It has the intention of these amazing angel investors, such as the CEO of Github, the CTO of OpenAI, and Peter Thiel. You could not ask for a better roster of folks supporting your company. Brian himself was recently listed on the Forbes 30 Under 30 and is tackling one of the most pressing issues in cybersecurity at the moment, which is MITRE CWE 798, or for the rest of you out there, that is the use of hard-coded secrets. So Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Absolute pleasure to be here.
So, dude, it is so excited to have you because, like I said, that is a hell of an intro because you were building a hell of a company behind you, and it's just so amazing to see this runway that you've hit. Just like the problem, the caliber of problem you're tackling, the people who are behind you supporting you tackling this, the need for it couldn't come at a better. The need is present, and solving this couldn't come at a better time. So we've got a lot we want to talk about today. I want to get your opinions on the state of secrets in the world today. Why is it so hard? This adversarial kind of relationship that shows up when security has their tools to fix the problem and engineers don't want to use it. Where we're going to go with ENV files in the future, so on and so forth. So we got a lot to talk about. But let's start with kind of an origin story. Every hero has one. Not too long ago, you were an engineer at Uber, and then you left that to become the CEO of Doppler. What was that journey like for you?
Yeah, I mean, first off, I'd like to say I don't think I'm a hero, but I think it's the cumulative work of everyone at Doppler that are heroes. So yeah.
Well, if you knew how much I hated secrets and code, then anyone who wants to solve this problem is going to show up on my hero list. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. So yeah, my story at Uber was quite interesting. I started actually as an intern. I was in college at the time, and I had a very crazy career path at Uber where I went from intern to leading an engineering team there and doing special projects for the CEO. And I've always been a builder at heart, and so I had this side project at the time, also called Doppler. And it was a crypto machine learning marketplace, all the buzzwords in one. And it was quite a grind, to be honest. It felt like climbing up a hill. Every 5 feet that I moved forward, I would slip 10 back from exhaustion. It was just really hard, and it took me a long time to realize, probably a lot longer than you'd think, like 8 to 10 months to realize it wasn't going to work. And there's this one day where I was just like, there's nothing I can do to get this thing off the ground. And so I started looking at all the problems I was facing, and managing environment variables and secrets just kept popping up in all these weird, interesting ways. And so I go to this founder dinner about a week later, and there's about, I'd say, 40 to 50 founders there, and most of them were developers. I think almost all of them were. It was a Stripe Atlas dinner, so I actually think all of them were. And I asked them, hey, am I a terrible engineer, or is the world broken? You tell me, what's going on here? And if I'm a terrible engineer, I'm totally okay with that. I'll accept it and improve. But I want to hear what you guys have to say. And they were all struggling as well. I'd say like 70+% of them. And one woman in particular comes up to me running, and she's like, "I've had 3 outages this week. Have me a solution by Sunday." And it was a Wednesday, and I was like, no. I cannot have a solution by Sunday. But it did spark my curiosity, and so I started looking and talking with more people, and I found that individual developers to medium-sized businesses were really struggling with ENV files and homebrewed systems, and then very large enterprises were using solutions like HashiCorp Vault, and they were also struggling and also paying the price of like $500,000 to $5 million a year. So it's like with all that money, all those resources being thrown at it, it was still not working. And it felt like the world was broken, from my opinion. And the main reason why, when I dig really deep, was just the tools weren't built for developers. And yet,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, the security team may be making the decision, but the developers have to live with that decision and work with that decision on a daily basis. And so I wanted to do something a little bit different. I wanted to build something that won the hearts and minds of developers, not just worked for them, but really won the hearts and minds. Because I think the best security tools make vegetables taste like candy, right? Like when I was a kid, I used to hate eating my vegetables. I mean, I'm a little bit of an overweight guy, so like you could probably still see it today if you see me on the street. But man, if you can make those vegetables taste like candy, I would eat them all day long. And that was the exact same thing I want to do for developers, is give them a tool that they would actually really love using. And so we built the first. Oh, sorry.
No, I was
Sound like
gonna
you
say
want
that
to
I think
jump
that's
in.
a great insight. I think it's a great insight there. Like if we can make security taste like candy, I've actually I've actually used Cupcakes to move security agendas forward in the past. So I'm not far from
Hell yeah.
implementing that. It's like if you patch your system, Connor will buy you Cupcakes. So
Amazing. I love it. We should actually implement that at Doppler. We have a similar one, which is, I would say, the inverse, which is if we catch you walking away from your computer with your laptop open, someone can go into your Slack and say, "Hey, I'm buying donuts for everyone." And so that's kind of like the price you pay for because security is not just at like the software level; it's entirely across
yeah.
the board, as I'm sure you know. Um, so back to the story. I was really inspired after a couple weeks of doing research, and I started building. In the first 3 weeks we had the MVP, and then became the real grind, which was getting people
Mhm.
to trust us. And because
Hmm.
like we're saying, hey, give us your secrets. We'll keep them secure. We're a 3 week old company, and we have to also do it in a way that keeps your applications up. And so it's a lot of what I call Chipotle sales. In a pre-COVID world, I would just take people to Chipotle and say, everything's on the menu, but I get a rant at you for 30 minutes. And at the end of it, we got a couple people using Doppler. And from then on, we joined. We were very lucky to join YC, Y Combinator, for people who don't know. Sequoia led our seed round, and Google led our most recent round, and we've been off to the races. And now I think we're about to hit 6,000 companies using Doppler.
That's amazing. And I think that's a testament to you building a developer first experience that solves security problems. And I've been speaking with a few firms about this recently. So there is adversarial is too strong a word, but it's getting there. There's a broken relationship between security engineering and software engineering. And I think part of that is that security tends to solve our problems, and the security vendors make products for the security customer to buy. And then the security customer goes, everything I want, great. And they turn around and implement. And then their stakeholders, their customers, who are the software engineers, hate it. They reject it. They're like, this is gross. We don't want to do this. We want something that works with our tool systems, that works with our tool sets, that integrates in our flow. Then it just becomes this battle. So the fact that you are building something that's like developer first is pretty thoughtful, and I think is probably one of the reasons you have like 6,000 companies, as you said, using it.
Yeah, and I also think we kind of got lucky in a way. So, like, to be quite honest, I stumbled into it quite literally, and I didn't even realize it was a security company for like probably the first couple months. I thought it was just like a config storage, like environment variables. I didn't really put the security presence or thought process there. I kind of realized it over time, and I actually think that was a blessing in disguise, because it allowed us to focus on the developer. If you look at a lot of security tools, who are they built by? They're built by security people, right? And so it's like they're
Yeah.
struggling in their current job at something. They're like, oh, I'm going to go be the change that I want to see in the world and go build it. But then they build it for the same persona of security, versus for that end user, the developer.
That's true. I think that's a good testament to like just those who are in that space trying to solve these problems. Like, who is your customer's customer, and build for them, and then because that's the person at the end of the day who needs to adopt the thing. But that said, I think secrets in code is a massive problem, right? And I want to talk to you about that a little bit and get your take on this, because this is more than just there's just more than an uptime issue here. Like, you had that lady run to you and say, I had 3 outages in the week because someone, is copy pasting the wrong variables, or copy and pasting the wrong credentials, and we have some trailing white space, and then the whole thing falls in its face. So there is that operations component of it. But secret, like from a security perspective, as a security leader who's running a program, these things resonate really closely home for me and for a lot of the audience on the podcast. So like 2016, Uber was breached because someone put S3 credentials in their Git repo. They got leaked. Equifax in 2020 had a breach because of that. Starbucks had their API keys for Jump Cloud in there, which is their identity source of identity. SolarWinds, that was massive. Part of that breach, I know it was big, massive. Well, part of that was the FTP creds in committed to code. And then in Brazil, during all the COVID testing that was going on, there was 16 million Brazilians information was just leaked online because a developer had an Excel. It was the weirdest thing. The Excel spreadsheet committed into his repo that goes up there, which is open on the internet, and then people found the links to the things that were unauthenticated, and 16 million people's health records were on the internet. So This secrets in code is massive, and part of it is the velocity and scale of change. Like one small mistake, you commit it to the wrong repo, or your repo goes from private to public, or whichever it is, can have these huge knock-on effects. So, I mean, that's my perspective of this. What are you seeing when you're helping these companies grapple and understand the landscape around secrets in code?
I think one thing to start off with, which I think you touched on a little bit, I want to drill home, because we have a very strong opinion at Doppler, which is we believe that every company, every single one of them, has a responsibility to keep their customers' data secure. And what that means is, like, even if you build out all these defenses at the DNS level, at the application layer, at the infrastructure layer, even at the employee physical layer, if you all these defenses, if you are literally if you're not protecting the literal keys to the kingdom, then it's kind of like you're giving it all up, and eventually that's going to lead to a leak or breach. And so I think this is one area that's often deemed unsexy, right? Like, if you think about applications at the end of the day, they have three main pillars. They have they have code, they have compute, and they have secrets, right? And we have great tools for code management. We have great tools for compute, and secrets is really the one that needs a lot of love. And the reason why I think people are struggling so much, leading into your question, is because I think we assume that secrets management, there's this assumption that secrets management is hard. And the reason why it's hard is because there's actually two different layers into secrets management. There's the storage and there is the management layer, right? And I would argue that, like, most of the good tools out there do a really good job of the storage layer, AWS Secrets Manager, HashiCorp Vault, and so on, right? Yeah. But we're all humans, right? We like dashboards, we like user experiences, and not only do we think in certain ways, right? We have the concept of projects and not key value stores. I don't operate on a key value in my mind, right? That's just not how I work as a human being. I want the concept of a project, and I want the concept of environments in those projects. And so really having that management layer is incredibly important for humans to interact with very sensitive data. And when you don't have that, developers are lazy. I'm one of them, and I'm a lazy person. And what do? I do the easiest thing I can do. And sometimes that before Doppler, in a before Doppler world, that was putting it in code, which obviously leads to all the devastating things you just mentioned.
Yeah. And it's super easy to get in code too. I think I want to get your perspective where you're seeing a lot of people trip up around this, because the amount of times, if you want a chuckle and like a horrifying moment, go onto GitHub, right? And just put in keywords like AWS keys, and like you can do that, or git ignore. Like the git ignore files getting committed to your public repo is not a good thing, you know? So you end up with these files that are, it works if these files stay private, and then these files end up being public. So I think it is so easy to make a mistake that it's just like, this can't be the current state of affairs. The way we're using our Git repositories or other code management solutions can't be the way forward, because it's just too easy to make a mistake.
It's not only that it's just easy. This is a tricky one that it took us a while to realize too. It's also unobvious, right? So I'll give you a classic example. Engineer A adds a secret to code. This is just a practice they've been doing for like a year or so. Security team comes in and it's like, we're not doing that anymore. We're going to use something better. I'm not going to name what it is, but they're just using something better. They take all those secrets out of code, right? And then at one point in let's just say a year forward, they're like, we're going to do some marketing efforts and we're going to become an open source first company. So they open source the repo. Well, guess what? In the commit history, a year ago, 2 years ago, there are tons and tons of secrets flying around that still may be active, and that's not obvious.
Totally agreed. I mean, I've worked with I've got somebody else in our podcast community who is focused on surfacing up those secrets and detecting those secrets in code. I mean, but even if you just jump right into using an open tool, Truffle, I was to get there. Yeah, with Truffle, and you run that, it is incredible how how many secrets are there? Even you're like, yep, we took all secrets out of code. It's like, nope, you didn't. There's a bunch more sitting in your Git history, and you don't want to go rebase them. So you got to go rotate your keys. That's not really the only path forward. But it is easy to miss them if you don't have the tooling in place to detect them.
Yep. And I also think there's one important thing worth noting here, which is like the problem is getting much bigger every single day. And that's because there's three big waves happening all at the same time. There's an explosion in the number of projects companies have, right? Especially due to microservices, right? And so there's more different sets of secrets and maybe different teams doing it in a different way. Some may hard code it, some may use env files, some may use YAML files, some may encrypt it in Git, right? There's like endless options you could have done. And then the number of secrets in each project is exploding as well because more and more people are using third-party services, right? Back in the day, you'd build your payment stack from scratch. You didn't need a Stripe API key. Well, now you do. You have Stripe, you have Twilio, you have SendGrid. And so the number of services is really growing rapidly. And then the last one is the number of places that you need to keep all those secrets in sync. And so that includes engineering teams, right, for local development in all these projects. And engineers not typically just on one project; they may be on a couple, right? So they need a couple projects in sync at a time. And then also all the cloud deployments, and we call those destinations in our mind. So it's like destinations is the number of engineers you have and the number of cloud deployments you have. And so with all those three things rising, it's quite scary how much surface area there is for a chance of exposure, right? Like if you times all these things up, it's quite a big number in your company. It's not like, oh, I have just 2 secrets. It's no, you have probably like a couple thousand touch points. I mean, if we look at our Doppler customers, we have customers that have hundreds of projects with tens of thousands of secrets in it. That's literally in the hundreds of thousands of touch points at that point.
And that's a kind of a scary metric, So let's just take a moment to percolate on that, because it's like when you have these 3 waves, this goes back to that fundamental shift where, as security leaders, we've kind of internalized, let's be an enabler of the company. We want the company to succeed. We don't want to say no to things, right? We want to say, yes, here's how you do it.
Exactly.
But unless you have this path forward, unless you have the right secrets management solution, I really do see it as it's like this is the mechanism by which we as security leaders are able to help. Because alternatively, if we don't put forward this tooling, whichever the product is, whatever that you go with, like if you don't put forward this mechanism for a secrets manager, then you really are saying, hey, engineer, figure it out for yourself. Hey, that's not enabling.
Exactly.
That's not enabling securely. That's you neglecting your responsibility. So
I want to touch on one other thing, which is like, I mean, maybe this is a crazy thing to say. I'm a slightly crazy person, so I'll go with it. But which is, I think it would be wise for every like security engineer to be screaming at the top of their lungs to get companies, even small ones, to be using a secrets manager. And there's a very specific reason why. It's because one of those companies, or a couple of those companies, are going to become a really big company. And someday you're going to join that company, and you're going to run security there. And you're going to inherit all the 6 or 5 years before that of misdoings around secrets, where they're all in a bunch of different crazy places, right? That 100,000 plus touch points over 6 years that you're going to have to go and clean up and be responsible for. And the best thing you could do is teach the next wave of companies and the current one right now to use a secrets manager, so your life and your job just got 10x easier and 10x less scary.
That's a really good idea. I think we'll do that. If people know me, they know I'm kind of on this little war path right now. Anyway, I'm just like, come on, folks, we need to solve this. We got to solve it, But I think, So, you mentioned something really interesting there about the requirements for an effective secrets manager, right? It's not just storage. Do you put it in an encrypted place? I think maybe a lot of people stop there. It's like, is it encrypted when it's in store? Is it stored safely? Are you accessing it safely? Are you are you authorized to access with role-based access? And there were a few other things. You mentioned a few of them, but could you walk us through, like, what would you want to see companies when they move down this road into secrets management? What does a healthy solution look like?
So I think the first part is the naming is completely broken in this industry. I love the tools, but the naming is broken, right? If you look at AWS Secrets Manager, it's not really a manager, it's a storage destination, right? That's what it is. It's a gigantic key value storage. And so really, if I could rename the industry, what I would say is you have a bunch of storage layers: AWS Secrets Manager, GCP Secret Manager, HashiCorp Vault, and so on. And then you have, secret storage solutions. And then you have secrets managers that are that central source of truth. In our case, a universal secrets manager that writes to all those destinations. And I think that's the model that we need to go down: is separate the management and storage layers. so that developers have the tooling they need to really store secrets securely, and also remove some of the guesswork, right? Like, I think one of the biggest advantages to using Doppler is we remove a lot of guesswork from the developer. You don't need to think, oh, is this a config and do I store this in code, or is this a secret that goes in a secrets manager?
Yeah.
No, everything goes in a secrets manager because everything needs to be secure. Let's remove the guesswork from the developer. Let's be opinionated and say this is a project and these are environments, and the development secrets go in the development environment and the production secrets go in the production environment. And giving them those developers that management layer enables them to actually be more productive in their jobs. So it's kind of like they're getting better at their jobs by using this tool, and the company's getting more secure at the same time. And then you can separate that storage layer out, and you can say, hey, at the end of the day, I want this stuff written to AWS Secrets Manager because I want to control the encryption keys and I want to control the rotation policies, right? But the developers shouldn't have to worry about that at all, right? They just need the management layer.
That's a really good insight. And I think, from a security perspective, I like that mechanism as well, separating out the two, because there is a sense of like, I have benchmarks and standards that I want to run against my secrets, the repository where the secrets are going to be, the storage layer of that, right? And I have a thing like, hey, are we encrypting it properly? Is the key management around this proper? So on and so forth. And actually, there's a lot of tooling to help out with that. So if you are using AWS Secrets Manager, there's literally a CIS benchmark that you can run against AWS that helps surface up some of these key areas. We use kind of, in my security programs, we put in a cloud configuration posture management, and they have an opinion on what it means to be, are you negligent, not negligent when it comes to how you store your keys. But they can't talk about the management because that is very unique to how that it's a different problem, I should say, right? Have you implemented RBAC? You can't just run a benchmark against that. That's customized to how the company is doing least privilege and so on and so forth.
I also think this is not a new concept at all, right? Like, I think in the three pillars I was talking about, right? Code, compute, and secrets. We're already seeing this today, right? In code, you have Git, which is the protocol and also the storage, and you have GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket that acts as that management plane, right? So this isn't a new concept that we're inventing for secrets. This is something that's already been done. It's just a lot of people put a lot of amazing effort into code and compute, but but secrets still needs that love, and that's where I think Doppler comes in and really tries to shape the way of the industry and show that we can do that for secrets too. It should be a first party citizen.
Totally, I'm with you there. So while I was preparing for our show here, I started just doing some more macro research on the state of affairs, and one of the things I found interesting was a recent breach with CodeCov. Was really interesting because what we saw now is that the adversary assumes that there are secrets in code, and so what they're doing is they're targeting engineers specifically to breach them. Get on an engineer's laptop, get a set of credentials from an engineer so you can access their code, and then go ahead and just troll the code base, and then you'll eventually surface up the secrets. Like, it's so well assumed that there are secrets in your code base that the adversaries are just going straight for the engineers who have the access to the code base.
Yeah, so, it's a major problem. And one thing we did at Doppler to kind of solve this, and I also don't think this is like just a Doppler specific trying to solve this problem. I think a lot of amazing companies are trying to do this as well. And I think there should be more companies in the universal secrets management space. But the kind of golden idea is like, don't put your secrets in plain text on disk, right? That is like a really big no. Don't do that. And so what we do, at least at Doppler, is we inject it at runtime into the application. Right, so it's a very limited scope. Like, you have the terminal session or the shell box, and then in there you have Doppler run, which then boots up your application. And so it's very limited scope of who has access to those secrets, and Doppler's managing that process throughout the entire experience. At least if you use the Doppler CLI integration. There's many other ways you can integrate Doppler, but at least in that world, Doppler is protecting your application and making sure only the right processes have access to it at the right time, and because it's managing that. So it's more than just like, don't have it on disk. It's like, what processes have access to it?
Yeah. And I think that's what I hope every leader is just taking as they're listening to this and kind of thinking about their environment. It's like, regardless of technology, right? It's just, do you have a secure storage of of your secrets? Do you have role-based access or least privileged access to those secrets? Then can they remain untouched until they're needed at the last responsible moment, which is the deployment time? So as you're deploying your service, your Jenkins, your whatever is reaching out, pulling in the secret, and then injecting it at build time, and then off you go. And at that point, you've kind of I think that's how you start to minimize the risk around this, right? Yeah.
There's another big way you reduce the risk, which is I think we all know this as business leaders. Access or IAM roles in AWS and GCP and Azure are quite confusing, right? And it's so easy to just kind of give up and say everyone gets access to everything, right? And especially when your secrets are stored, like if you're using Azure Key Vault or AWS Secrets Manager and so on, it's so hard to kind of like lock down that one area without impacting a whole bunch of other things. And so the world where you use a universal secrets manager is you get really good access controls in that secrets manager that's outside of AWS. And then when we write to AWS Secrets Manager or Azure Key Vault or wherever as that destination, that place can be super locked down and you don't have to worry about any implications of that. Right, so the users get the right access at the right time, and then the core destination at the end day is like super vaulted in regards to like security controls and encryption keys and rotation policies and so on.
Fantastic. Yeah, I agree. That is a good way to start thinking about this. True is, can we put this middle layer in with a stronger management? I did want to talk about a little bit about your perspective on from the vantage point that you have. Right, you're helping a lot of companies try and solve this problem. When we start to see like supply chain risk, I really think secrecy in code kind of falls into this category. And I think of supply chain risk is, while there are things, why it falls in this category in my mind, or like your perspective on it, is because it's one of those things that you can have a small mistake that has an incredibly large impact, right? So you take an upstream library, you put some backdoor in it, everybody adopts it, boom, we're in a place. You leak a credential once on a repo, and boom, everyone has access to not what you think it is, but it has access, maybe even an overprivileged AWS key inside there. Now it's not just that S3 bucket that you think it has access to, but it has access to all your runtime environments as well. So,
or another famous one of you're using a package that someone just bought and now injects some malicious code into it, and you have an auto update right in your package.json, and now you've installed that malicious code.
Yeah, that's never happened. I just want to be clear, that has never happened in the security industry. We have no recent experience of this at all. It's like, yeah, that's another great example of these things going. So again, when we're thinking about these as security leaders, what would you recommend how we frame this with engineers? I think that's where I want to go, right? And let's get your opinion on when we start to solve these issues that can have these massive impacts, like secrets in code, and we need to bridge this relationship between security and engineering. What are some of the things that we should be looking for to help cross that bridge, to make it accessible for security engineering? So we're partnering together on it versus security trying to like force controls, or engineers feel like their liberties are being taken away.
I think there's two things you need to do. The first is the way you communicate, the way you build a relationship with the development team is really important. It's not like, hey, you're going to go do this thing, but there's going to be a give and there's going to be a take, right? On both sides, right? So an example of like in Doppler's world is a developer is going to get a secrets manager, a universal secrets manager. At first, they may be like, oh, why do I need this other tool? But once they start using, they're going to be like, wow, I'm like literally 3x more productive. Or in a lot of cases, we hear like we save them 2 to 3 hours a day and headaches from like their local builds breaking, right? So they get some value out of it, and then the security team gets it as well. So basically, it's a win-win relationship. You can't have it where it's just like, hey, I'm going to give you something and I'm going to take something in return, which will be a lot of times like if you give someone a security tool, you're taking away their productivity, right? There needs to be a win-win on both sides. The next thing you need to do, because we did talk about supply chain, and guess what? Injecting those secrets in the environment isn't enough, right? For some companies it is, but if you want to get the most secure, what you actually do is you write it to an encrypted file on disk, and the application reads that file, decrypts it, injects the secrets directly into the libraries, not into the global process, and then deletes that encrypted file. That's like the most secure, but that's a lot of work, right? So what you do is you break it into steps, almost like a breadcrumbs to the Holy Grail. right? And each step a developer is taking, they're getting something in return, and they're building up to a bigger thing, right? So you start on easy mode, like in a video game, and you build up to hard mode. Okay, we're going to use a secrets manager. We're going to remove all secrets from code. We're going to centralize in one place. Then the next step is we're gonna take the next phase, and then the next phase, and eventually, like after a couple iteration loops of that, you're in a really, really good spot, right? And developers start to become feeling like a thought partner. One thing we've done with our customers, just to kind of like share it with anyone who's listening, is we share with our customers. A lot of them are actually developers. They're not the security team. They're not the DevOps team. They're actually the end developers, and that could be full stack developers, data scientists, high school students, college students, you name it. Just the everyday developers using Doppler. So when I say this, I really mean it. Is they actually get excited about security. They don't like it when tools are pushed down on them, but they get excited about learning about how they can make the world more secure for them, for their parents, for their friends, for their significant others. And sometimes that is just like sharing a couple pieces of insight. So like a good example is like I have a friend who's a customer of ours, and he pinged me last night, and he was like, "Hey, we want to take security seriously because we're building a Robinhood for real estate. So it's really important that we kind of keep everyone's money and ownership and secure." And I sent him a list of things that he could do, and he thanked us, and he was like, "You should make a blog post out of this, right?" So remember, like most tools that you throw at them, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want this security tool. This is going to make me unproductive or whatever." But that's not that's when you push something on them, that they don't get anything in return. That's going to be the outcome. But if you teach them along the way, you can get them excited, and you end up 5 breadcrumbs in as they're a thought partner, and they're like, "Oh, can we do this? Can we make it more secure here? Can we beat Russia in this way?" Or I guess let's not name countries or adversarials, but like you get my point of like they become a thought partner and a with you along this journey, which is the end state you want to be at.
God, and couldn't agree more. That end state of thought partnership is where we all want to go. So what would you recommend? What would be the next steps in what does that maturity life cycle look like? What does that journey look like when it comes to secrets management? So if we do get all our secrets adopted into a centralized repository, what's next on the roadmap for most security leaders?
So I think the thing that you need to do is wait, just to clarify the question, I want to make sure. Let's say they use a secrets manager. You're saying what can they do to continue down that secrets management road, or just security in general?
Yes, that secret management road.
So I think for every security thing that you do, you need to give a developer or DevOps thing as well. So I'll give you an example. You could say instead of the first step was using Doppler in the basic form, which injects an environment, which means maybe a node package has it, right? The next step we're going to do is we're going to encrypt it to disk, and then the application is going to read from, and that's going to probably be 150 lines of code. But in exchange, we're going to turn on auto restarts. So every time that I change my secrets, a developer doesn't need to go in and click the redeploy button anymore. It's automated, just like it is in Git, right? And so there's there's 2 gives at the same time. Maybe like if you're walking 1 foot forward, like left side, right side, same thing.
Yeah.
Developers security, and so it really does become a thought partner.
That's cool. I like that a lot. Sorry, go after you, please.
I was going to say there's a couple of things we're working on our roadmap right now for Doppler that they'll share. So one of them is pull requests. We've had code pull requests for code for a long time, where you can have thoughtful reviews, and developers actually really like a good pull request. At least the senior ones do. The one that appreciate building quality software, they really appreciate a thorough pull request. And we're going to be building the same thing for secrets. And you may be thinking, why is that important for secrets? Well, it's like not every secret is like an API key that isn't controlled by you. It could be a feature flag as well. We have a lot of customers that store tons and tons of feature flags, all the way to the use case that they're controlling their entire iOS apps from Doppler through feature flags, right?
Wow.
Yeah, and so in that case, you probably want some level of review there of like, hey, should we really flip this feature, and should it be configured in this way? If this value is set to this, can this other value be set to another thing, right? And so pull request is a big one. Auto restarts, secrets rotation, dynamic secrets. These are all things developers get genuinely excited about, especially when they don't have to write 1,000 lines of code to make it happen. They can click 2 buttons and they can see the magic happen.
I love that. Like anytime we get to automate this, I think secrets rotation is a great one, right? If we can go back as far as we want, and we've had this recommendation from NIST and others, which is like when your password is X old, rotate it. Now for users, we've kind of moved away from that. We just said, hey, if it's long enough and there's no sign of compromise, you can keep it around when paired with 2FA. But when it's sitting in your code base, like it's using a runtime, like there's no like second factor, so there has to be some other thing you're doing. So rotation still seems to be a genuine control there because we were missing out that second factor. So like if there's an opportunity to automate those rotations, and again reduce the window of which your reduce the exposure window for which you could have for a leaked secret, would be awesome. Second thing, like if you can somehow tell the engineers that they're coming, that's kind of cool too. So yeah, I like the idea where we can take these security principles and work them into a nice organic way for the developers that puts them in the driver's seat. That's cool to hear.
And I'll share like one for like around secrets rotation that gets most developers that we've talked to really excited, and also the power of a management plane like a universal secrets manager. So imagine you have this policy: I'm going to rotate my database credential every 30 days. Actually, let's get more exciting. Let's do once a day. So once a day, we're going to rotate our database credential. Now in Doppler, you have the ability to reference secrets. So imagine you have 20 microservices. They're all talking to the same database. You can reference that secret in Doppler 20 different times. So instead of changing it in 20 different places, you change it once and it's updated. And then each one of those places that it's being that it's referenced, there's a destination connected to it. Like let's say AWS Secrets Manager, Azure Key Vault, and GCP Secret Manager, maybe Nullify for the front end. So a lot of different places, right? What we can do in Doppler is at once a day, it gets rotated. That gets the references kick in and propagate those changes out to all the 20 different projects that are using it. Then integrations kick off and push that into AWS, to GCP and Azure. And then finally, auto restarts kick in and restart the application. The entire thing was automated end to end. And you can kind of see this workflow happening, working for you as a developer. That gets a developer incredibly excited and is also incredibly powerful for a company from a security lens.
That couldn't agree more. That's pretty awesome. I mean, that's just been like the Holy Grail, right? It's like, can we take these standards and stop trying to tell people to change their behavior, but have the technology conform to the behavior that we want? As a security leader, like, man, the amount of like capital that you save, just the human capital that you save trying to do that, because then you get to build it once and bring your partners in the engineering community along for the ride, versus saying, okay, thou shalt, stop what you're doing every day between 12 and 2 p.m. and we're going to go through this rotation process. That doesn't usually fly over very well.
And there's no human in the loop, right? I think Elon Musk said this best: anytime there's human interaction, that's error by default, right? So if you can remove the human from the equation, that's really a powerful thing. Not just from the lens of security, but also typos, right? A secret needs to be 100% correct, both in the key and the value, right? So if you're off by just one character, that's a guaranteed outage. Maybe you're eating lunch and the secrets rotation policy comes up and you're like, okay, I got to drop lunch, do this real quick so I can get back to my buddies. And you copy and paste really quickly and you miss a character and boom, production's down. That doesn't happen anymore in the Doppler world.
Yeah, it couldn't agree more. I mean, like, if it's not perfectly accurate, then it's not the secret, right? It's something else.
Exactly. So. It's something else. It's actually worse than something else. It's useless. Or negative.
Yeah, exactly.
Negative.
I think there's a lot of I think what I'm looking forward to here is I'm seeing this industry start to grow up. Like this is a booming industry that's starting now to solve this problem. I think you've positioned yourself and your team you jump as a leader in this space. I've really, as we've gotten to understand your product and kind of what you're doing with Doppler and the vision that you hold, I've really enjoyed seeing just even the change over the last few months with new feature releases coming out, and the fact that the engineering it's like engineering's the customer number one, and then security's customer number two, and you can make security really happy by doing these things and getting the adoption. So,
thank you so much.
I did have a pleasure. It's my pleasure. I mean, I did want to spend. If you want, we can go down like what the future of ENV is. We can get into some of the details. But I'm also just as happy to ask some very rapid fire, like meta questions that we do at the end of every podcast.
Sure. So, would you mind before we do that, we talk about ENV files for just one last second, and then
let's dive into it. Yes. What are the future of ENV files? Where are we going?
So I think they're I think there are no more. I think if we look in the future, there will be universal secrets managers and storage destinations, and there will be no such thing as an EV file, and that'll be something we look on in the past, for a lot of reasons. Like the classic example I like to give is, imagine we're working on a school project or a project, right? And I have a Word document, you have a Word document, everyone has a Word document before Google Docs, right? And I make a change, and I have to share it with you. You have to copy paste that change into your document, and everyone has to do that. And if we're all changing documents at the same time, it gets quite complicated, right? And so and now you have the world of Google Docs and Notion where you can just change things on the fly, and then everyone gets those updates. EV files are the same way. Hey, if I add a secret, you still have to get that secret, and you have to go check email or Slack and so on. And that's just a really old model. I think from a security side, from a developer productivity and happiness side, the industry just needs to move away from it as fast as possible. Use a secrets manager. It doesn't have to be Doppler. Just don't use an EV.
This is a secrets manager. I'm struggling because you're like, and then you have to go update the secrets by going to email or Slack, and I'm like, yeah, that's what we're doing, isn't it? Like that's just the state of the art at the moment. Is that we're just unencrypted, sending around some of the most sensitive set of credentials in the environment. Your company makes money by those things integrating and talking to each other are key. Yeah, now that makes sense to put an unencrypted, non-regulated form to transfer from that. It's like, but yeah, that's the state of the art right now. That's why we need this change.
I agree. Well, thank you so much for allowing me to jump into that real quick.
Yeah, thank you, and I'm glad you did, because I love that analogy of the ENV files being the old school Word Microsoft Office documents that we saw email around or write the floppy disk for someone who's a little older. So, dude, okay, so career advice. So for those who are listening and who aren't in that leadership role at the moment, but they're coming up the ranks, they're a security engineer, they're running a security team, and they're ready to go. Like, what is some career advice that you might give to them? And or if this helps, what would you have told yourself 10 years ago or 5 years ago that you wish you heard today?
Yeah, that's happy to. It took me a long time to realize this, of what is someone that you want in a leadership position? What is someone that is creating, not even a leadership position, what is someone who's creating really high impact for a company, for a project, whatever, for a team, whatever it may be? And I think there are two things that sit on top of another, which is you have high passion. So like you are really excited about this. We kind of have this concept of Doppler of artists and assassins. Artists do it because they genuinely love it. They would do it for free in their free time. And then you have assassins that will only do the work when they get paid to pull the trigger. And you only want to hire artists. You only want to work with artists because they genuinely love what they're doing and they get energy from it. It doesn't drain them. It gives them energy. Like when I'm frustrated at night, guess what I go do? I code, right? That gives me happiness. The next one is you want someone who's really has mastered their craft. Right, so you could call this someone who's senior in a role or whatever it may be, but it's less about the years of experience and more of like they really get what they're doing and they love it end to end and they know all the ins and outs. And so when you have someone that has a really high degree of passion and a really high degree of craft of their trade, then it presents an opportunity to have high ownership, meaning you can give someone a project and let them run with it end to end. And at the end of the day, that's what leadership's all about. That's what being high impact is all about, is being able to own things end to end. Someone comes up to you, or you even come up with it, and you're like, oh, that's a great idea. I want to go run with this. And that's what happened with me and Doppler. I had this idea, and then I went and ran with it because I had confidence in myself and I was really passionate about it. And that also that can also happen inside projects. The way I kind of had this crazy career at Uber of like doing special projects for the CEO, like after being at the company for a year and a half and starting as an intern, was because I kind of just joined meetings and I took on projects that nobody else wanted to take on. And I was just like, oh, give me all the ownership you can possibly get. And so what I would say for anyone who's listening who really wants to go and create a big impact in the world is figure out what you're passionate about, become an absolute master in it, and then go take on as much ownership you can in that. And that will just take you all the way. You don't need to worry about money. You don't need to worry about promotions. If you just do that, everything else will follow.
Passion and mastery. Absolutely. It's a deadly combo in like the most positive sense of the word. When you've got those two things going, I couldn't agree with you more. Like that's the winning ticket. Now I may already know the answer to this question, but I ask this to everyone. If there was one innovation you wanted to see in the security space, you wanted every security leader and technology leader to embrace, what would that be? I wonder what it could be.
All right, I'll give two because I think everyone on this podcast knows I'm biased here. But I'll just say I wish deeply that everyone would in the security industry and the software development industry as a whole would adopt a universal secrets manager. I think it will do the world a ton of good, and from both developers, from security to DevOps, everyone in between. The second one that I wish we had more of in security is just like tools that got developers genuinely excited. It's not like one class of tool, but it's like I actually just want to rewrite the notion that security tools don't have to suck. They don't have to take away your productivity as a developer. Like if anything, I want you'll know when it's successful when developers are running towards these tools and asking and begging their teams to use this tool. That could be the security team or DevOps team. In our case, that's how all
Yeah.
of our enterprise deals started. Is a developer used it locally. He in his side projects, and he brought it into the enterprise, and he begged the security and DevOps team to use Doppler. And I just want to see a lot more of that. I think the having a greater defense against hackers and attackers would their attacks would greatly be diminished if everyone was just kind of building tools like this.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, mate. That's really good, really sound advice. And I'm looking forward to that. I think there's a change happening. I think we're getting there as an industry, realizing that we need to make these tools not only just palatable, but exciting for the people we're trying to protect. In this particular case, would be our engineers. So Brian, I just want to thank you. Oh, please. Yeah.
I keep doing this, and I apologize. I'm new to podcasting, so if this is annoying for the audience, I apologize for jumping in at the last second. I'm learning my ways. Be patient, please. But I would say the last thing with developers in particular, and I think this is a really important note for anyone who's going to be building a security tool or developer tool in the future, is there's like if you go back a couple years, like consumers have this like really high bar for product, right? If you go and download an iOS app, you're gonna or a Mac app or whatever, you're gonna have this really high quality bar. You're gonna be like, does the design look good and everything? And developers have traditionally been the opposite. They're like, just give me a terminal. If it works and I get the utility value, I'll use it. That's not the world we live in anymore. Developers have this really high bar now. And though they may use a tool that has high utility and a terrible user experience, but they may not promote it with their friends. They may not. They may switch to something else or stop using it altogether for something easier. And so I would really push you not just to think about the utility and the value you drive, but also the experience you create for developers along that way.
I think that is the soundbite that we should end with, because that is the most magic right there. When we start doing that, we start thinking through the experience all the way through. So I just want to say to everyone who is listening to the episode right now, don't wait. Follow Brian's advice. Let's get a universal secrets manager in our environment. If you're interested in Doppler, jump over to doppler.com/demo. The site will take you the rest of the way, but it's doppler.com. That's doppler.com/demo, DEMO. Start there. Please do follow Brian on LinkedIn. We'll have links to the show notes. And then, of course, follow him on Twitter to stay up to date with what he's working on and where the company is going. And don't forget that we are releasing this episode every Wednesday, these type of episodes every single Wednesday. And then on Friday mornings, we have our live show as well, where we're helping security leaders and technology leaders stay up to date on what the most important events in the security news are every single Friday morning. So, Brian, thank you so much for your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you to the audience for listening. If you made it this far, I'm really grateful and appreciative.
Okay. And dude, until next time, I will see you guys all on LinkedIn. Take care.